Well, this is going to sound a bit funny, but I kind of feel like someone needs to speak up in defense of stupid people. And I don't hear anyone doing it. This week I hear a lot of liberals on, YouTube and elsewhere talking about, all the social platforms, including this one, of course, are um, flooding all these fake people, these bot accounts that are all, regime simps and, of course, all designed to be like young and attractive looking, most of them. Some of them will be like cute old people too, with a warm smile. And, there are all these archetypes that you can tell just by looking at them. They're AI, and they're like, they look at the camera in like a half sultry way, and it's like, yeah, like, who is this for? But you hear all these liberals talking about how GOP voters are lapping it up. And I keep hearing them say, how stupid. Oh, these people are so stupid. Oh, everything's going to be destroyed because of stupid people. Rah, 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 rah. And that is not helpful because, this is not about like safeguarding the feelings of anyone that supports fascism. When I say it's not helpful, though, I mean there's a great many people that really don't know what they're doing or don't understand what they're supporting. And a lot of that is chosen ignorance. But we have to understand what the difference is between ignorance and stupidity. Ignorance is simply the absence of knowledge. It's simply not knowing something. Now, that can be because you choose not to know, or it can be because there's no way you could have possibly known, or it can be anywhere in between. But stupidity is about cognitive dysfunction. It is to be stupid means it's difficult for you to learn. And that is a confluence of things that are mostly beyond a person's control. And the thing is, I grew up with my grandparents of the silent and great generations, and I hung out a lot with people their age in my early life. And they knew plenty of stupid folks. But when I think back on stupid folks of that age, I mean, so many of them were good people. And, stupid people, like, helped elect FDR. Stupid people, helped build the Works Project Administration and the TVA, and, stupid people built the Hoover Dam. You know what I mean? There were a lot of people that were not the brightest bulbs in the firmament. And certainly a lot of people that, whether they were smart or not, didn't have much chance at education. That still had a good moral education and a good upbringing and a good grounding, in their community and in other people and caring for other people. And it still led them to reaching what were functionally intelligent political and social conclusions at the end of the day, even if they believed some weird zany stuff along the way. They would still work their way eventually to the right place, And the idea that, someone is stupid and therefore they're going to be a fascist, that's a complete non sequitur. It doesn't make sense. My grandfather ran a sawmill once upon a time with his brother. And most of their employees were black because it's very dangerous work. And the thing is, at the time that they ran this business together, both my grandfather and his brother, and he'd be the first one to tell you, were huge racists. They thought of African people as inferior to them, in some sense, intellectually, if nothing else. They got into a huge argument that ultimately led to my grandfather taking his stake out of the business and leaving and quitting without having any idea what he was going to do to earn a living after that, when he had a child by then and a wife, and like, it was, kind of like the post-war slump recession, like, and it was, yeah, but it got to that level because what happened was, and obviously, as I needn't tell you, in the Jim Crow South, like, these men were being underpaid to begin with, these black men that were doing this dangerous work. And my grandfather, at least, would be out there doing the work with them. He wasn't going to sit in the office while other men risked their lives on his account. Like, that would have struck him as unmanly in addition to immoral. So he would be out there with them, and his he would leave his brother to handle, the boring stuff, the paperwork. But he figured out, eventually that his brother was either shorting the men on their pay or making them wait for their pay needlessly. And it wasn't unusual in those days with small businesses that their pay flow really would be a bit irregular, that they would say, like, oh, you have to wait till Monday or whatever. There was also more generosity with employees too sometimes. But in this case, it was just straight up, my grandfather's brother was cheating them and sitting on the money for no reason, for using it for his own ends or to invest or whatever. And, he always had an excuse as to why they'd have to wait. And so it got to the point to stop him from doing it. My grandfather said, well, gosh, if we don't have enough money in the pool, then, like, I guess I'll have to pay them out of my salary. But that means I won't be able to pay my half of the mortgage payment this month because they shared a house. And so they kept, my granddad kept forcing the issue that way. And eventually, it became irreconcilable, because the whole point I'm trying to make here is both of them were racist. Both of them were racist. Now my grandfather became less, so that was the beginning of a journey for him, and some other things he'd experienced during the war. But the point is, even from that same starting point, the idea that, okay, well, I view these men as inferior to me, and therefore I'm going to cheat them and lie to them and steal from them, that's complete non sequitur. That doesn't follow. That doesn't make sense. One thing doesn't lead to the other. In fact, that you consider these men to be fundamentally intellectually inferior to you in some way only makes it more despicable what you're doing. Because then, you believe in some sense it's like taking candy from a baby, right? Like, they can't stop, they can't help it. And in many sense, like, that's not wrong. It's not because they weren't aware of what was going on, but I mean, there was nothing these guys could do about it. Really, they were at the mercy of their white employers. And no government body was going to do anything about it. So, but anyway, point being, one thing does not lead to another. And so that's how it was with people at that time, that even where they had moral failings and or epistemic failings too, they still had limiting principles and compensatory mechanisms inside of them that helped to limit the damage and to make up for their wrongdoing, or to vitiate it entirely, even in some cases, because they had checks and guards on their worst impulses. And so they may have a prejudice, but in practicality, in the real world, like, that prejudice would bump up against other considerations. And so it's just astonishing to listen to some of these people, the way they say now, oh, well, I'm MAGA, and therefore, as if it's like an explanation for anything that follows. When it's, but basically, my identity is just being a horrible person, and so, like, that's what it amounts to. But the point is, stupidity is not the problem. And to paraphrase Jesus, who said the poor will always be with us, the stupid will always be with us. And what they need is love and leadership. And the thing is, if they don't get that from reasonable, decent people, they're going to get it anywhere they can. Because, like, think on a time, when you were really drunk or really inebriated in some way, and remember how vulnerable you felt then if you were in an unfamiliar environment or something like that, right? I mean, think about being stupid, right? Like, now the people that choose ignorance, like, that's another story. But people that are actually stupid, that actually have a hard time learning and reasoning and retaining information, and that is a lot of people. Imagine the vulnerability and the fear that they feel because they know that in many ways they're at other people's mercy. So the worst thing you can do is to blame them for being stupid. That's like blaming somebody for like whatever physical act, for being skinny or big, or like, it's like taking pride in your height and mocking someone for being short. Like, neither one of those things make sense. It's not something you did to earn. And in fact, people's intelligence, and there's many different facets to intelligence. It's not just one thing, but like, that can be a product of how well nourished were their parents, what socioeconomic condition were they in, how much stress were they under. That all influences the development of a tiny young brain. So the idea that, the problem is we have stupid people. We've always had stupid people. But if they aren't embraced by loving leadership that tells them, I see you, it's going to be okay, and I know you're scared because life is hard, and there's legitimately scary things happening, but you don't know if someone's doing them to you or if they're just happening or what the deal is. And like, it's terrifying. So those people have to be, if they really are stupid people, and again, we need to be clear about the difference between stupidity and ignorance. But if you are actually talking about people that are stupid, then you just have to appreciate they need to be told. And liberals are not comfortable doing that, in many ways, is the problem. And they have this, they all want to think of themselves as like these Renaissance men of the Enlightenment that, like, by the power of my reason and all the Mason Illuminati, sort of, I'm a enlightened Cartesian ego wafting above the world. They don't want to, it's this individualism, it's this toxic individualism that says everyone has to figure it out for themselves. But not everyone can. Not everyone can, and it's not reasonable or fair or just or kind to expect them to. So stupid people need love and leadership. People who choose ignorance need sanction and scorn and approbation. But don't hate people for being stupid. That's absurd and obscene.